Good evening and welcome to Perspective. Tonight, Islamabad is preparing for a major diplomatic moment as King Jordan II is scheduled to visit the capital tomorrow. We'll be talking about, of course, how this signals Pakistan's diplomatic successes as we've seen for a long time now. We'll be talking about that. We'll also, of course, be talking about this in the light of the continued attacks that have happened, that have enveloped Pakistan from the Afghan side. And we'll be talking about, of course, the no to talks at this time and the ceasefire at this time, and of course the continued diplomatic success in the wake of these terror attacks, and how Pakistan stands and its resolve stands in the world at this time. Of course, in the light of the statement from the US also in terms of renewing trade, in terms of China, our global successes all over at this time on the diplomatic front. Please stay with us. I have with me right now with us Khurram Dastgir, who is a former defense minister. But before we go to him, we are going to go to our correspondent, and who is right now with us, Rafe Sohail, who is going to update us on the attacks at this time and the apprehension of the terrorists who have been apprehended today as far as the attack on Islamabad is concerned. I have with me Rafe Sohail. Rafe, can you confirm the apprehension of the terrorists? What details do you have at this time?
Yes, Mahrukh, authorities have now confirmed that 4 individuals have been apprehended, and that this apprehension is helping the investigators and is leading to more sources and more threads that is helping them with their investigation. And also we have found out from these officials, these sources, that these people have their handlers within the Afghan soil, and they were being handled from the Afghan soil. So also the officials have said that they now have the situation fully under control. I am right now standing in the red zone in front of the Parliament House, and you can also see that traffic is at its routine. The security situation in Islamabad, the capital city, is under control as per the officials.
Even in the wake of these attacks and of course the apprehension of those terrorists, we still at this time see, as far as the situation in Islamabad is concerned, as the capital prepares for, of course, King Abdullah II's visit tomorrow. Overall, you know, the current situation with regard to security, with regard to, of course, the Sri Lankan team that is touring Pakistan at this time.
Well, Mahrukh, you know, different pickets and checkpoints have been set up all around the twin cities, especially Islamabad. The security situation, as per the officials, is very much under control. King Abdullah II is also scheduled to visit Pakistan. He will be arriving tomorrow on a 2-day official visit, and the security situation of Islamabad, this reflects that the security situation of Islamabad is under control. Also, we have different delegations currently in Islamabad, in Pakistan, which were taking part in the Inter-Parliamentary Speakers Conference.
Rafe, also, you know, we've seen that as far as calm is concerned, even in the apprehension of these terrorists at this time, as far as citizens are concerned, as far as the day-to-day activities are concerned, are you looking at any delays? Are you looking at anything, you know, out of the ordinary at this time?
Mahrukh, there is no delay and nothing out of the ordinary. The public is absolutely comfortable. The security situation is under control. We see that the offices and public spaces are open, and people are on about their business and on about their daily routines.
Thank you so much, Rafe. Thank you for updating us. I'm going to go to Khurram Dastgir, the former defense minister. Khurram Sahab, we of course want to talk about the attack also, and of course, you know, the fact that we've apprehended the tourists, but for the terrorists. But at this time, as far as the situation stands, you know, when we look at the global stage, we also look at the visit of King Abdullah II. We are also looking at the Sri Lankan team, among other delegations that are in Pakistan at this time. I want to talk about diplomatic successes of Pakistan before we go to the continued terrorism that keeps coming in from the Afghani side. Let's talk about our diplomatic efforts in the last year even, or so if we talk about on multiple fronts, when we talk about countries like USA, China, Russia, Bangladesh, what are your thoughts on this effort, this continued effort as far as Pakistan is concerned?
Well, Pakistan has been blessed with this opportunity during Banyanul Marsoos to express its national power to the world. And what I will say is, in a personal impression, is that it has led to a rediscovery of Pakistan by the world, which had sort of set us aside, particularly after the United States withdrawal from Afghanistan 4 years ago. So this event, which of course has many other facets, this India-Pakistan conflagration, but one of it has been that since Pakistan was able to not only withstand but defeat an enemy that is by all reasonable counts 10 times larger in conventional power, nuclear power, in economy, in also many other elements. So Pakistan's strength has drawn new attention. Pakistan's alliance with China that it embarked upon 10 years ago has drawn new attention. And the fact that the Western world, particularly the United States, is finally sort of moving ahead with its own strategic calculations and not be mired in the Afghanistan defeat that they suffered 4 years ago. So the new Trump administration's effort to see the world in a new light, not just through the Afghan lens, has led to improvement in relations with Pakistan. And similarly, Pakistan's military strength that we demonstrated. And particularly, I want to note Pakistan's ability to fight what is a new kind of war, principally fought with missiles and drones. And then Pakistan's other aspect of fighting the war, which was the information front, in which also Pakistan excelled. So the 22 days of Marka-e-Haq, or 4 days of Banyanul Marsoos, have forced the world to sit up and see what modern war will look like, what kind of weapons are necessary, which are successful, not so successful. And that is the reason that our brotherly countries in the Persian Gulf are once again looking to Pakistan. Their whole angle of looking at their security was to the Western arms and Western arms imports that they used to do. But Pakistan has demonstrated, I think it's a very significant fact, that despite...
When you talk about, of course, it's significant, like you said. I also, we know that the US embassy, again, of course, as far as trade with US is concerned, they've reiterated the fact that they want to, of course, trade with Pakistan when we look at the economic front. So I'm saying that, if you look at diplomatically, we are channeling, our economics in terms of, economy, we are channeling trade at this time, we are channeling bilateral relations at this time, even as we, like I said, continue to grapple with this kind of terror that keeps emanating. As far as the Indian nexus is concerned, do you think it's also, Western and Eastern borders and how, the enemy comes in different shapes and forms?
Well, the first thing is that the US policymakers, particularly, have reviewed the past quarter century of their practically feeding India. They took India into the civilian side of nuclear suppliers group. They've conducted a very deep defense cooperation agreement. We just renewed for the second time a couple of weeks ago. But they have found that India has failed to perform its signal role as a counterfoil to China. And that's why there has been this disappointment. There's also this very clear sense from the US that not just for India, but many allies, that the era of strategic altruism is over. So this altruism in which the US keeps one-sided cooperation while not expecting anything in return, it's very clear that that is over. And also, I think another significant fact that is going in Pakistan's favor is that the US administration is not as knee-jerk anti-China as previous administrations. There's also a relationship they're looking into, and that's why it's very uh, signal fact to note that while US has imposed tariffs on China, tariffs on India, but the tariffs on China has been delayed multiple times. So Pakistan's opportunity has opened up, and I think that's where we have been lacking and still lacking is a portfolio of major investments that we could offer not just to the United States, but also to our brotherly countries in the Gulf. We have made some progress in these strategic metals, rare earth metals with the US. We have made some progress in some oil exploration. Because actually, there is much to be done. And if Pakistan is able to create this portfolio of possible investments, you will see increased American interest and increased interest by our neighbors in the Persian Gulf.
Well, I think in terms of interest, of course, like I said, there's also the renewed hope that there will be trade with US also and other countries. China, of course, like you also mentioned, and rare earth and rare minerals at this time. But overall, in terms of what's happening as far as isolation is concerned, a lot of hyperbole that was being spewed from across the border is somehow, seeming redundant to the world at this time as far as Pakistan is concerned. And if we move to now Pakistan and Afghanistan, the apprehension of these Khawarij, how are you looking at the stance that Pakistan has, of course, now said that no to talks and no to any and all kinds of terror that comes from there? How do you see things at this time on that, kaleidoscope with Afghanistan?
I think what should give us a lot of confidence as a nation is how Pakistan not only defeated India militarily, but completely turned the tables diplomatically. And it's India that is looking increasingly isolated. It is India that is now floundering and trying to reestablish its relations with China, while Pakistan is, alhamdulillah, going from strength to strength. We should, of course, be wary that this very soft period that we have entered may not last very long. World can change. I mean, one of the reasons that we've had increased military cooperation, like the strategic military agreement with Saudi Arabia, is the hubris of Benjamin Netanyahu in attacking Doha, which has focused minds in the Arab world, and they are now looking to Pakistan to be one of their security providers. But as for Afghanistan is concerned, I think this has long been overdue. We have for too long been, I would say, if not blinded, but at least not seeing things clearly, because there's a large group of people in Pakistan who insist on viewing Afghanistan, which is a separate sovereign country, through the lens of our shared some language, some ethnicity, tribes. When the fact is that if you go to the other side of the border in Afghanistan, they just see us, maybe correctly so, as a different country, whereas we have also always been soft on this for many historical reasons. But now that Pakistan is at the longest last hardening its stance, I expect that this will also result in hardening of our borders. But to say very clearly that we will not allow terrorism to emanate from Afghanistan, and also this clarity that now that the US has been gone from Afghanistan for 4+ years, there's no longer any jihad or anti-American jihad or some religious war that these people are fighting. The terrorists that are attacking Pakistan are being supported by India, and their sole purpose is to not only spread terror, but frighten our people, to destabilize Pakistan. And in a way, I think it should be very clear two things should be very clear to us, that the distinction that we used to make between TTAP TPA and TTP is no longer valid. One. And second is that when we say that we are fighting terrorists from Afghanistan, practically we are fighting India on our western border also.
That's, that's what I wanted to come to. As far as India coming through eastern, western borders is concerned, when we look at these statements, when we have said no to any kind of trade with Afghanistan, for a long time, like you said, a lot of reasons, one of them, of course, the people of Afghanistan has been behind us, showing some latitude to Afghanistan. At this time, do you think that the Afghan Taliban are cognizant of who's the real loser in this kind of attitude, acrimony that they have developed over time? And we've seen what happened with regard to the talks also.
Yes, this topic of trade with Pakistan hurts Afghanistan much more than it does, because our exports are roughly 3 to 4% of our total. Our exports to Afghanistan are 3 to 4% of our total exports, whereas their exports to Pakistan are a substantively large number. So one is when things about trade and how it's going on, there's also this very serious issue of the people of Afghanistan suffering because a lot of food travels from Pakistan to Afghanistan. A lot of staples, rice, wheat, meat, and many other products that go. So they will be hurting more. And so there's a negative stance that the Afghan government has taken. I think it will be clear to them, not in a matter of weeks, but in a matter of days, that this policy is unsustainable. Whereas, in fact, this might bring some ancillary benefits to Pakistan, because a lot of supply issues that we face regarding staples in Pakistan, in all these commodities like rice, wheat, meat, chicken, is because a large quantity is exported to Afghanistan. And if that export stops, then perhaps Pakistan's supply situation will improve and prices will decrease inside Pakistan. But the main thing is that this stopping of trade, and in fact, Afghanistan is adopting the same policy as Narendra Modi's India, is that they're making policy not on a rational calculation, but on mere hate or animosity. And when policies are made on hate and animosity, they are irrational and they end up hurting the country more than the other adversary, in this case, Pakistan. So I believe Afghan Taliban government will realize that we could have, despite, we could not have very good or pleasant relations, but we could trade with each other as many adversarial countries do. I mean, India and China trade with each other, and China, Taiwan trade with each other. So many countries trade with each other which are formally or diplomatically hostile to each other. But we should realize that, again, despite the cultural and religious factors that we share with Afghanistan, that it's a separate country and we have to deal with as such. And also, I think from my personal experience, I can say that the sentiments for Pakistan in Afghanistan, at least I have found them to be universally negative. There are very few people that one meets in Afghanistan who realize the same measure of brotherly feelings that we hold for our Afghan brothers and sisters. We still wish them the best, but their government has to realize that this policy based upon animosity is going to hurt their country more than it's going to hurt Pakistan.
I want to move more into that. Like you said, of course, this policy is going to hurt them more. But we also have with us Iftikhar Firdous. He's a security analyst, executive director at the Khorasan Diary. Thank you so much for being with us. Iftikhar, before I go to him, Khurram Sahib, another question as far as this rise in terrorism is concerned, in the wake of the talks that we've seen, one of the things that was the issue was issuing the fatwa on terrorism that comes from there on Pakistani soil. When the Afghan Taliban said that they'd only issue guidelines, we also spoke about the lack of sincerity there. What do you think this lack of sincerity stems from? When we look at, you also said that, it's very rare to find those Afghans that have good sentiments for Pakistan here. In the wake of all that we've done, what do you think, this lack of sincerity really stems from as far as the Afghan Taliban are concerned?
It stems from a historical animosity that is present in much of Afghanistan, not all of it, but much of Afghanistan, and stems again from the difficult history of the first Afghan war. Pakistan is accused by many Afghans of profiting from the war in Afghan. So, if I can state this accusation blandly, I would say they accuse us of getting dollars in Afghanistan's name. And so therefore, there's a sense that despite Pakistan hosting more than 5 million Afghans for decades and giving them much more openness and liberty to travel and do business inside Pakistan than, let's say, compared to Iran, which held them in camps and really allowed them to move about in society. Despite Pakistan's fellow feeling and a large number of people who always advocate for having a soft stance for Pakistan, it has rarely been reciprocated on the Afghan side. And I think all our illusions that we had that despite the first Afghan war and the fact that Pakistan was a place of refuge for many Afghans fighting the United States during the US presence inside Afghanistan, that the goodwill that we expected has not materialized. It should be very clear to us. And therefore, and of course, the consequent issue of the United States finally stopping its support to Afghan Taliban regime, which it had been doing since its departure. But now with President Trump's arrival, that support has almost ended, which is causing tremendous economic problems for the Afghan Taliban regime. And it is here that India has stepped in with financial support. And the quid pro quo for the financial support is an attack from the West on Pakistan. So India is continuing its proxy war by funding the Taliban, and they are attacking us. And we just have to be very clear in prioritizing the defense of our sovereignty and defending our people against this terrorism. And if there is a chance for talks, I appreciate the government's willingness to engage in talks, and we are still willing if there is some movement on the other side to acknowledge and accommodate Pakistan's concerns. But for the time being, it does seem that we have stopped talking and we are back to this tense situation. What we need to realize is that there are also a large number of people, just like there were a large number of people who were soft towards Afghanistan. A large number of people still hold that we can negotiate our way out of this problem. I do not agree with them. I think if negotiation could be made successful, the government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which has been quite sympathetic to the Taliban, could have negotiated the return of its writ on the 12 western districts, which it has almost lost. But it hasn't worked. And so while keeping the door of negotiation open, we should realize that we are in a difficult phase of this relationship, which we always hope will improve in the near future.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you for your very valuable time. Khurram Saab, thank you for joining us. I'm going to go to Iftikhar Firdous. Iftikhar Saab, first of all, something that Khurram Saab said in terms of, leaving the door of negotiation open. We also had a statement by the Minister of Interior saying that, we cannot talk to those that continue to bomb us. In the wake of all that's happened, what's your take on this?
Khurram Saab has actually explained it quite in detail. But just to give you my take in terms of how I view the situation, Afghanistan is obviously a neighboring country and one of our largest borders is with Afghanistan. And the Taliban, fortunately or unfortunately, are a de facto government that hold quite a sway in Afghanistan at this particular point. But the recent developments, the way that they have taken place, and the amount of bellicosity and negativity that's been, shredded across the spectrum from Afghanistan at this point against Pakistan, it's very clear that the negotiations aren't working. Even when the talks in Istanbul completely collapsed, from what we hear from people that were across the table from both sides now, Afghanistan has come out more vociferously against Pakistan since then. But the Pakistani side, because it has a certain diplomatic channel through which these decisions are routed, because the government in Afghanistan is not just a problem for Pakistan, it's something that was created under a global consensus deal, which is known as the Doha Accord. So obviously, the United States and Qatar, China, as well as the rest of the neighboring countries also have a say in terms of what happens in Afghanistan. And I think that's why Pakistan, looking at Turkey and Qatar's mediation, has so far resisted, from what its utmost measure to counter what's happening from Afghanistan would have been. But under the current circumstances, I think Pakistan would like to keep the ceasefire for two reasons. Firstly, it would like to give diplomacy a chance, and the statements that we see from both sides are obviously a quid pro quo from what's happening on ground. And if Pakistan had to strike Afghanistan, I think that the suicide bombing in Islamabad was and the attack on the cadet college in Wana in South Waziristan were enough, to actually do that. But I think that Pakistan will wait for the Turkish delegation to land in Pakistan and see what they have to offer, because I think that there are some back channels that are still talking for one reason for another. But Afghanistan, in the last couple of days, we've seen like almost tons of press conferences from their top leadership, stopping trade with Pakistan, ending license agreements with pharmaceutical industries, and giving a 3-month deadline to their traders that they need to search for alternate routes that actually lead to Afghanistan, which is actually almost equivalent to or tantamount to warmongering. So I don't see how this would settle, but I think that.
But Iftikhar, what do you see is it hyperbole in your opinion? Is it just, a lot of talk as far as the Afghanistan Afghan Taliban are concerned? Or also, because we have sufficient proof at this time in terms of a lot that has been uncovered with regard to these recent attacks. In the wake of that and how the mediators will look at all this, do you think that should concern the Afghan Taliban also?
I think that the way that the Afghan Taliban have positioned themselves, uh, they've actually shown that they're a state that is not ready to talk. And they'll only talk in terms of their own terms, which is symbolic of two parts. Firstly, of its first government in the early 90s, and anybody who thought that the Taliban 2.0 would be any different. I think all those hopes have been slashed by almost every hope that was rekindled in one way or another when it was said that there would be an interim government which would lead to a more inclusive government in Afghanistan, and there would be no terrorism from Afghanistan, no foreign actors. All of that has been slashed, and I think it's just about time that its Western benefactors, particularly the European Union and the United States, actually decide in terms of what the future governance of Afghanistan is. And I think that the Taliban also realize that, but they, for their own ideological reasons, I think it's very difficult that anybody would have any sway with them or make their decisions to change. I don't see them cracking down against the TTP or Baloch insurgents that are hiding in Afghanistan. It hasn't happened in the past. I don't see it happening in the future also. So I think that the only solution that remains is for Pakistan actually to contain it with a carrot and stick policy. But there will have to be a revision of policy on Pakistan side as well. Most of the statements that we see are not based on realpolitik, but mostly on more emotional lines, in which we see most of our political leadership actually saying that we kept you with ourselves for 40 years and we've helped you out in one way or another. And we've had several ministers now part of the cabinet who were tweeting on August 15, 2021 that the Taliban have come to power. And I think that idea that Afghanistan will, in one way or another, be subservient to Pakistan. I think that should now change. It should be treated like any other country that we treat, that we have diplomatic relationships with, having some kind of expectations from Afghanistan that they would toe the same line as Pakistan. I don't think that's possible at any point. And our national security should decide how we carve our future relationship with Afghanistan.
In terms of what's happened at this time, do you think that we have a modus operandi for our future relationship with Afghanistan? Because we've seen the attacks, we've seen the proof, we've also seen the communication trail between the attackers and handlers. If we look at this recent attack in, and the fact that it's established in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, as far as the recent attacks are concerned, what does this say about the operational networks in Pakistan that we are confronting? That the operational networks that Pakistan is confronting at this time, when we look at this trail, just to explain.
Yeah, so when we look at it, we do have an internal counterterrorism issue in two provinces, which is Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. In the Balochistan government, I mean, we have little resistance in terms of what the federation wants. But in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, it's a political problem. And that's, I think, a bigger problem for the federation or the federal government to deal with, or the state to deal with, because it's counterterrorism, or rather national security, that's coming directly contravening with counterterrorism measures. Unless we see the political parts of it settle down, I don't see how the counterterrorism part would work, because it's a bridge in the making. So you cross the bridge while you are building it simultaneously. It's a process in the making. Our relationship with Afghanistan has gone 180 degrees. It's a complete paradigmatic shift from what Pakistan's expectations were and what it actually has turned out to be. So I don't see any reset of relationship on what they were before the strikes took place in Afghanistan. But I do see that there will be a change on how we deal with Afghanistan. As far as your question is in relation to, counterterrorism measures in Pakistan.
Yes, but just to interject, and then I'll let you get back onto that question. The thing is that when we look at sitting with Afghan Taliban again, in the wake of what's happened, in terms of these proofs that we have, of course, if we look at mediators also, if we were, for example, to sit there, what about the narrative that they've been talking about, that their soil is not being used, a lot of assertions that came from their side, of course, they stand clearly refuted. Do you think that, they haven't lost face sufficiently enough? They will be able to, face Pakistan across the table in the wake of what's happened and the kind of proofs that we have?
We have this idea of the Taliban embedded in our mind of being someone honest and not playing the same diplomatic game from a Machiavellian handbook. So that's why we ask this question, and we've been asking ourselves this question. If you look at Pakistan's policy after 2021, the first narrative that came in, because the TTP's attacks increased, we tried to convince ourselves that the Afghan Taliban do not have the capacity, and that's why they cannot do it. And then when the attack still did not stop, we tried to convince ourselves by saying that they might have the capacity, but the will is there, so we're still trying to convince ourselves that they might take action at some point. And then when none of it has happened, we've taken 180 degrees turn in this entire relationship. As far as your question in terms of sitting across the table is concerned, I spoke to the interlocutors that were there in Qatar and Turkey, and these are not Pakistani officials. I'm talking of officials from Turkey and Qatar. And they actually said that at the last part, when the negotiations were taking place, the Taliban had agreed to a certain amount of what Pakistan had said and were ready to sign a draft. When they actually got a phone call from a secure line that they'd asked from Kabul, and the lead, who was Abdul Haq Wasik, who was the head of the General Directorate for Information, was passed on a piece of paper. And after reading that, he sort of had a frown on his forehead, and he read it out by saying that, we don't have any entity by the name of the TTP, and Afghanistan's soil would not be used against what you've just reiterated, against anyone, which is clearly, the Afghan Taliban, even the delegation that was part of this entire conversation, clearly you can see that they did not have the authority to make the decision. So we have to understand how the Afghan Taliban government is structured at this particular point. There are various groups, there are various power brokers, but obviously Kandahar and their supreme leader Habatullah Khunzada is the one that needs to be brought to the table to be spoken to, and I think he's the one who will make the decision. From our information, from open sources, and from different officials that we speak to, also in Afghanistan, TTP obviously has been legitimized by the system itself, and this is a systemic problem. I think for any structural changes within the system, it will be very important that those changes actually come from the hierarchy right from the top. I don't see any actions being taken against TTP even in the near future.
With the kind of evidence that we've uncovered at this time, do you think that there's also, I mean, what the presence of TTP, the amount of it, the extent of it, what can you tell us about that as far as, within Afghanistan?
See, the counter-terrorism problem, it's the first thing is that whenever people actually refer to the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, a lot of people actually haven't seen the area. And despite the fact that Pakistan has been able to fence almost about 94% of it, and some of it, there are like 53 different areas on the fence that are still vacant, and those are actually either on the higher altitude or snowbound areas. And so it's useless to actually erect a fence over there because it's impassable at this particular point. And still terrorism has not stopped. And that actually shows you the geography on how this area is actually structured geographically. And it would be nearly impossible even in the future that if any changes of governance take place in Afghanistan, and some elements or anti-Pakistan elements are there, whether it's the TTP, whether it's the BLA or some new group, this problem will remain. So the first part is that what do we do with the internal security mechanism in Pakistan? And the second part is that what do we do with it in Afghanistan? In Pakistan, I think that one of the major problems I've highlighted is that the counter-terrorism is actually tainted with politics, at least in this area. And one of the largest problem is that you now have a two-front problem in terms of counter-terrorism or state resources. So for any state, you have a specific allocated quota in terms of how much pressure can a mechanism take that is in place. At this point, your eastern and western borders, we see an alliance between Afghanistan and India, and both are pressuring valves of Pakistan. And which becomes a problem, because if you actually just concentrate on your northern border, in the western and the eastern border, they also start having problems and might disrupt into a bigger problem. So first of all is to actually find a solution across the table. And I think that's the way to go ahead with it as well. Whereas you can deal with one later on and not both of them simultaneously. That is what actually counterterrorism theories and war theories tell us at this point. But it's more difficult, than actually being said about. But when you talk about TTP in Afghanistan, I think one of the problems is that you do have a border structured network that tries to stop infiltration or counter terrorist on this side of the border. But no border in the world is guarded unilaterally. And if Afghanistan does not have the resources or it does not want to stop it, this problem will remain perennial. The only thing that could actually change this scenario is another paradigmatic shift, which would have to be a change of governance in Kabul itself, or a governance that actually...
Imminent? Do you think that might be imminent?
Not in the near future, but I would give it at least 16 to 24 months before this scenario arises. And obviously, if you look at some of our partnering countries or the global geopolitical shift, a lot of people or a lot of countries actually do not view Pakistan and Afghanistan's problem as just Pakistan and Afghanistan's problem. They do believe that it is a catalyst or something to emerge in the larger MENA area, which is the Middle East and North Africa. So I also believe that the more Pakistan's leverage in the Middle East is increased, we will see increased activity on the border between India and Pakistan, as well as Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you for your very valuable time. Iftikhar Firdous, thank you for joining us. We have with us Sumaira Khan, who's a security analyst. Sumaira, thank you for being with us. In terms of, the discussion that we've just had with Khurram Dastgir and then Iftikhar Firdous, one of the things that, is something that one really is puzzled by is the kind of financial support, you know, the kind that the Afghan Taliban seem to be banking on. In your opinion, do they expect there to be some kind of, you know, monetary sustenance, and where will it come from when they seek, you know, isolating so much? You know, when we talk about Turkey, Qatar, we talk about the mediators, the Pakistan situation. How do you see that landscape in terms of the economy of Afghanistan?
Thank you very much, Mahrukh. It's always lovely to talk to you in this show. And let me take this leverage of speaking to you. I'll most of the time, or maybe I'll take more time, like speaking as a Pakistani this time, because over 2 decades I've been covering all these Afghan affairs, both from Pakistan and Afghanistan itself. You know, you need to understand, first of all, where is the big chunk coming into Afghanistan when we talk about monetary benefits and the revenue. Let's talk about it in a simple term: revenue. Main revenue of Afghanistan is being generated through economic corridors of Afghanistan with its neighbors, including Pakistan. And there was a very funny statement from Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, who's their deputy prime minister on economic affairs. And when he, I think, probably issued a decree or what, that Afghan traders should be looking for alternative means, and they should be immediately seizing to their accounts in Pakistan, and they should be like blah blah, etc. I really liked Lieutenant General Said Street. He was very clear when he wrote that Afghans are probably not aware of the facts and ground realities. Major chunk of the revenue, probably it goes to 85 to 90%. It's coming from, they're extracting it from the economic corridors from its neighbors. Pakistan sharing the largest border with Afghanistan. And if you talk about Pakistan, you can't even threat Pakistan with the least chunk of trade you are doing with Pakistan. Pakistan is going to face nothing if you already are having your curbs on your trade with Pakistan. So that's another chapter. But let us discuss some important factor. Recently, there was a Senate's Foreign Affairs Committee's hearing. Not recently, but probably a few months ago in US. And there was a very important official from the US administration. And he cited that, yes, we are issuing $40 million weekly to Afghans. Now, that's something which was going to Afghans in terms of international aid. And this is why the Afghans are in thick soup, in trouble, because the US President Donald Trump, he announced that if you don't go my way, then you can take highway. So he is going to take strict action on that source of funding to Afghanistan. So now they are trying to look towards India, and the visit of Amir Muttaqi to Afghanistan a few weeks ago, when they simultaneously decided to attack few of Pakistan's cardinal posts in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. So they thought Pakistan would be under pressure because we are taking on Pakistan with the support of India on eastern border and western border. So Pakistan would be on its knees. And obviously they have to come to terms according to our rules that we are going to set. But that actually turned the tables for Afghanistan. So when you ask me about the financial matters of Afghanistan, trust me, Mahrukh, I don't see any independence in Afghanistan, even financially, because this is sort of a country which has learned to live on war economy over past some 6 decades. And it's not an easy habit to get rid of that easily. So we are actually letting Afghans go easy this time, because we are not saying anything. We are just saying, okay, find alternatives for you. And in the past, when you go back, when they wanted to talk about alternative port as Chabahar to Karachi port, they had been working way too hard to find that cerebral and spinal effect. But trust me, that had been breaking their spinal and cerebral effect both. So I think whatever their choices are, they have to be very careful in that.
You know, Sumaira, of course, you know, in terms of choices, but they don't seem to be making, of course, those choices that will be on the right side of history when we look at what's happening. But in terms of the nexus with India right now, do you think that India is going to be able, whether they look to India or not, going to be able to give them the kind of support that they're hoping for?
really glad you asked this question. No. India, and it's not me who's saying, their own Indian authors, bookshelves, the bookshelf behind me in my house is filled with books written by Indian authors. And from the killing and the assassination of Dr. Najibullah in probably 1996 to onwards, books are filled with the incidents where India betrayed Afghanistan on every level. So if they are not ready to learn from history, we are not their teachers, we are not their mentors, and probably we are not ready to take on that role. Honestly, we have our own plate full of like issues. We can't just keep nurturing you because you are a ragtag army, you are a ragtag state, so we have to take care of you. No, no more motherly nature from Pakistan. And honestly, you might be thinking that it's coming very straight from a journalist. Yes, because we have been seeing Afghanistan's role in past decades. Probably this is a stern stance from every Pakistani right now. We actually don't want to see Pakistan taking another Mother Nature turn towards Afghanistan. Let them face their own consequences. Enough of this taking care and this nursing behavior towards this country. If they claim to be independent, if they claim to be self-sufficient, and if they claim to be, what do we call that? I might not use that word, but okay, I'll use that word, conceited. They are acting conceited. So if you are acting conceited, we are well off with you. So Pakistan is right now in a state of mind. Pakistan is totally taking a backseat, looking at the theater that is being set up in Afghanistan. And trust me, the result is not going to please any Afghan. And there will be another influx sitting on the borders with Pakistan. Because I have heard Afghans recently that this is the time when we actually want Pakistan to take over these tribal sites within Afghanistan's region, because we are done with this war all the time in our borders. So we want to be part of some country which is stable, that has organized army, that has disciplined institutions, and they might be having a weak economy, but at least they have a constant economy that is not relying on the foundation of war economy.
Right. Thank you so much, Sumaira. On that note, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining us. As far as Pakistan is concerned, of course, our diplomacy, our diplomatic efforts, of course, continue relentlessly. We are at this time at the apex of diplomacy as far as around the world. When we look at China, we look at USA, we look at Russia, we look at, of course, the visits of delegations at this time in Islamabad, even in the wake of the terrorist attack from the Afghan Taliban, the proofs of which are right in front. When we look at, of course, the upcoming visit of King Abdullah II, Pakistan is on the verge of exploring its economic opportunities, its diplomatic opportunities, and, of course, our renewed efforts at ensuring our balancing with regard to different nations around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.